Loyiso, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Your thoughts on this? When things happen in the country, be they politics?
Sometimes I haven't thought of the stuff, so sometimes I have not even considered anything. But go ahead, maybe I have.
Okay, well, here we go.
Yes, go.
So you look around the country and things are happening, and are there times though, and all of it's potentially raw material, but are there things that have happened or things you've seen that you thought, actually, I can't do that, that's not funny?
You mean like something that happened in the news and I was...
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of things that I sometimes don't touch on, whether it be on late night news, whether on a subject matter, unless I find it poignant or relevant. But it's like... something tragic like Marikana, you probably can't make something, but you might be able to make funny out of the reactions and the responses from officials and that kind of stuff. But it's really tricky. There's a fine line. Okay, I'll give you an example. It's quite odd sometimes what you find funny and what other people find funny. For instance, yesterday was June 6th, the day before. When's this, June 16? 2 days ago, right?
Yep.
So there's a picture of Hector Peterson being carried into a beetle. You've seen that picture?
Yeah.
The picture was online, and I was like, I tweeted he was never going to make it in a beetle. I thought that was, mildly humorous.
What response did you get?
And people were, there was a bit of an outlash. Now, here's my thing about humor. It's subjective. Right? What I find funny and what other people find funny might not be what you find funny. But then I was having a conversation with someone who confronted me on the street about this whole thing. And I said to me, I asked him, what does 1976 mean to you? And he said, oh, well, it's struggle and freedom and the people who sacrificed their lives and the youth of 76. But what were they fighting? They were fighting subjection. They were going, don't subject me to this language as a medium of education, right? So if you say I can't say what I said about the beetle and the thing, that's subjecting me to your humor.
Yeah.
And also you haven't really learned much from 76 if you're subjecting me to what you know what I mean?
Yeah. So can I ask you this? I mean, is there stuff that breaks your heart where you just want to turn away and you don't think, okay, I can't do it now, there's no angle? I mean, where's the sad space in your heart, if there is one?
Here's the thing. I tend to not... I read the news when I'm not doing late night news, but I tend to engage it way more and scrutinize the stories way more when I'm on air. And because I engage with it so much, I think it kind of depresses me a little bit.
Yes.
So all of it depresses me. The president's... I think there was a great deal of depression when he rolled his eyes in Parliament.
Yes.
He rolled his... It was funny, but it was like, this dude really doesn't care. He rolled... His eyeballs were at the back of his head. He rolled his eyes.
Yes.
And that made me feel a bit sad inside a little bit.
I want to ask you, when you encounter people that you've satirized, and I've had a conversation, for example, with cartoonists who say people almost feel left out if they're not included in the cartoon.
Yeah, that seems to be
just to finish the question, is there a moment where you think, actually, you and I are having a laugh together, but when I made fun of you, it wasn't in fun. I made fun to try and tear you a new one?
Well, I think the person who is made fun of is aware of the faults. I don't think they sitting there oblivious to the idea of humor and to the idea that they made a blunder or whatever the case may be. Right. But I think that the space of humor diffuses real confrontation. That's why I always go, real people who are real activists are real people who go out there and go for change. What we do is address issues in quite a how can I put it, in quite a light way. So I don't know if we have the same impact as actual activists.
Yes.
But I do think that we do get the debate going, and we're catalysts to a lot of dinner tables, which to I would say, lead to the next step, which is activism.
When you satirize someone, does it ever cross a line where you actually despise that person, where you dislike them, so that if you were to meet them socially and they were to think, ha ha, this was all very funny, and you feel like, you may not say it, but you might feel, actually, no, that wasn't funny. I'm deeply angry at who you are and what you do? Or is that not part of who you are?
Well, I'm generally not an angry person. I meditate and stuff, which is quite hippie, and I believe that everyone has to forgive anyone. So I'm an extremely forgiving person, so I don't hold a grudge for long enough for me to be able to act on it and be in a situation where I have to despise the person sitting across me. I think by the time I'm cognizant of people's flaws and stuff. I think that's a personality trait that I've developed through the years. But for the most part, there are times where I do feel angry. I think I get angry the most at the head of state because he's in charge of everything, and I don't think he's cognizant of the impact that flows through him. He is the example. He is the head of state. You know?
Yes.
So I don't know. I think these are very intense questions, by the way.
Yeah. What do you tell us about your Australian opportunity, and congratulations on that? I mean, what are you going to be doing, and
well,
a little bit about the show, which most of us, I'm sure, know nothing about.
Well, the show is a satirical show, which is pretty much the same as the show I do here in South Africa. And they cross over to me as the African correspondent. So I do the show via satellite, live into their audience via satellite. Yeah, that's pretty much how I do it. We've done 2 episodes already.
And?
It's been great. I mean, a lot of people on Twitter have asking me when I'm touring Australia. They really love my perspective and that kind of stuff, which is, I must admit, it's quite surprising and awesome, just as a career step.
086 00 00
Are you going to take questions?
Am I going to take questions?
Well, I mean, are you going to let people ask me questions?
Yes, yeah, I'm waiting for them to call. 086 00 00 959. Give us a call. Some of you are asking questions already on the Today with John Perlman Facebook page. Nompumelelo asks, what does Loyiso think about the state of the country, especially when it comes to politics? And she puts in brackets, jokes aside.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think state of the country is quite subjective to whatever person. If you, middle class, you might say a different way. If you well off, you might say it a different way. If you're employed, you might say it a different way. There's no one way to look at the country. I think everyone would see it differently. So my opinion is biased to my state. So even when I vote, I always do this vote. Is this vote for me or is this vote for the country? And those are 2 different votes.
Are they? Say more?
Well, I mean, you could vote for what's good for you. So whoever's going to do good for you. So whatever, if the party that you voted for might give you a tender or I don't know. I mean, tender is simplifying it, but I'd like to think that it's... Or do I vote for the party that's good for the country? Because everyone gives you their manifesto and their story. And some parties are good for the country, some parties are good for you. We all have different economic situations, we all have different work ethics, we all come from different backgrounds. So even though we vote for the same party, we vote for them for different reasons.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel. I feel sometimes I have the selfish vote, and the selfish vote would be I vote for the person who's going to help me out. Then the vote that's for the country, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, this one is going to go to the country, and that's where I put my X.
I want to come back to the Australian stuff that you're doing, but also you've been in the US. I think in April you were there. And
I was there in April. Then I was there in July.
Okay, so very recently. So what happens when you're away, and how do you change material? Is it something you research, or do you just feel it?
No, I just go there and do the show the exact same way I do it in South Africa. And people, I think I find this quite an odd question because I generally think South Africans as a country, not being race specific to anyone, because this applies to everyone, is that we have a low self-esteem. We don't, like, if you speak to a Nigerian, a Nigerian will tell you with a straight face that they are the best, and they're not trying to, act tough or be macho, they strongly believe that. And they go, as a Nigerian, I can be anywhere in the world and do whatever I want. Whereas South Africans, we double guess the situation. We doubt ourselves. Hence the question: how do I then adapt my comedy? It's a valid question, but it comes up enough times for me to wonder about it. Like, why would you? Why would you? Like, if you can understand Chris Rock's material. Then they can understand my material. We speak the same. I think language is the biggest barrier for comedy. I think we all go through the same emotions. We all share pretty much the same frustrations. So most of the time, we have more in common than we might put out. People. You can go to ghettos in Brazil and go to ghettos in Peru, and go to ghettos and you look, these ghettos look the same. I've been to a ghetto in Zambia and be like, but this is pretty much, you know what I mean? And go to a ghetto in Argentina, you're like, but this is pretty much, and people have the same vibe exists. And so people have more in common than
difference. Jeff's calling from Green Village. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Uncle John. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Cool. I just want to find out from our comedian rather about the material he's always writing, the jokes he's making. Is he using that as an educational thing or just to make people laugh? And if... Yeah, okay.
No, I just want to ask you, Jeff, before Loyiso answers, do you feel educated by him or do you feel amused by him? How do you receive it?
I get it as an educational thing.
Okay.
Because I learn a lot about our country, about our leaders, even though it comes to me as a joke, but I take it seriously. But is he...
Okay, Jeff.
I get the question.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Go ahead.
I think that first and foremost, I'm not an educator by profession. I'm a comedian by profession, and by definition, my first mandate is funny. So if it comes across as educated, or as if I come across as an educator or someone who imparts knowledge, that was not my intention. My intention was to get laughs first.
Are you pleased that Eddie gets something else?
Well, from the when I do stand-up comedy, and when I do the show, we try to make some social commentary, and we do make some social commentary. But what it is, it's satire, and there has to be a great balance in between the two. So if you do one without the other, if you do jokes without the commentary, it's not satire. If you do a commentary without jokes, that's not satire. It's a combination of the two. So I don't really think that one can exist without the other and be called satire.
Hi, I hear Loyiso Gola doesn't drive. How does he get around?
There's many. I cycle sometimes. Sometimes I just get on an Uber. Sometimes I just use public transportation. I don't understand. It's all simple, isn't it?
Reason for not driving?
It's not for me. It's really not for me. I just don't care for it. I don't think I've got other things to do. So, and people are always miserable in traffic. They're always miserable. It's a traffic jam, and it's not a good thing to be engaged in.
Here's Tabo calling from Rudaput. If you want to join in the conversation, 086 00 00 959 36959 for your text messages. Tabo, hi.
Hi, John.
Fine, and you?
Lovely.
Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to commend Loyiso for, I feel that there's an age of comedians that came a few years ago that really opened up comedy from the typical European American comedy that we knew we could relate to stand-up comedy in a more personal way, and I would just like to big him up for that. My question is, I was a big fan of PMS, the show that he was part of. What I would like to know is, was there any political reason for it to get canned, or did it end, or was it canned?
Well, I mean, that's a question not for me, but for the SABC. You must remember they own it. It was on their channel, so they're the ones you should ask that question. But Poor Milati Show hasn't been on air for like how long now? Maybe 10 years or something. People really love that show. It hasn't been on air for 12 years, maybe even longer. And till this day, wherever you go, people ask for the Pure Minati Show. I don't know. I don't think that was a political reason. I just, if you read the newspapers and you know about the SABC, I mean, I don't think I need to say more.
Do people like yourselves doing the work that you do run into perhaps some of the same things that musicians do, where you're developing new material, you want to go in perhaps a slightly different direction, but people want you to do the old stuff, play me the hits?
No, we on the opposite end. People want new stuff all the time, which is a difficult thing because it takes a long time sometimes to really make the material funny and become a thing. So it was like, oh, we want new material, you're doing all the old stuff. And I try to switch it up as much as possible. I try to write a new hour every year, which is a high turnaround rate by world standards. I mean,
yes.
Your average top comedian probably does a one-man show once every 2 years. And some of the best comedians do a one-man show once every 4 years.
Yes.
So because
and you've got one coming up, huh?
I've got one coming up called State of the Nation, which I will do in Joburg Theatre on the 25th of June. Then I go to Pretoria, 26, 27. Then I go to Cape Town. Then I go to Grahamstown. People just go to CompuTicket and find the tickets in their city, or just go to my website, loyisogola.com, and find all that stuff.
So take us into, share as much as you're willing to of the creative process. I mean, you're putting together new material. Do you sit at home and write? Do you sit at your computer? Do you test jokes against colleagues? How does it work?
No, you have to, every like, it's so funny, like if the process is quite a personal one. Everyone has their own way, but the most common way to do material, so you write an idea and then take it to a club or a small place. Like I take all my new stuff to Kitchener's every Tuesday. There's like a small tiny room there at Kitchener's, and we all try this material. There's a lot of comedy venues around the city that happen on a daily basis. I was doing a show last night. I was doing a show the night before, but very small, tiny clubs. And you write this material, you take it there, you develop it, you write it into a bigger show, and you sort of compile it and create a bit of a narrative and take it to a big stage. But the process is pretty much the same for everyone. They write the ideas, try it out in a small stage, and then continue with the process until... Is this a camera in front? This is a camera.
That's a camera.
Whoa, this is so spooky. I didn't realize there was a camera here.
There's one on me as well. So
oh, really? That makes me feel so much better.
Well, at least there's two of us. Can I ask you this? I mean, when you go to those small clubs, when you go to Kitchener's, you stand up, but you do so, I would think, in the knowledge that you're good, you've demonstrated it, you've had success. Does that mean you're no longer scared?
No, I'm always scared. I mean, being scared... For me, I consider that respecting the art and just wanting to, just having the fear. It's the same as if you're standing around a group of strangers in a bar and you think of a story, you want to share it with them. Your initial thought is, oh man, are they going to like my story? Or is my story going to have relevance? It's the same fear. It's not the fear of the crowd. It's a fear of, am I going to be able to communicate what's in my head to these people?
Yes.
Right. And so for me, that's the thing. Because if you find the thing funny, you've tried and tested the fact that you can make people laugh. So the funniest, the hardest thing is to take the idea which is in your mind and transfer it to someone else.
I mean, I'll come back to this because this is fascinating for me. But Tabo's just called from Santon and wants to ask.
Hey,
will you tell us, Tabo? Hi.
Yes, John, good evening, and Loyiso. Two quick ones, right?
Yes.
But perhaps maybe as a touching point, Loyiso, as one of the forefounders of comedy in this country, I think I want to suggest that the PMS was one of a necessary stage in your lives of your careers. I think it came and it passed. I think to a certain extent it launched a lot of your fellows' careers.
Right.
But maybe linked to my first question, I just want to find out, in your comedians thought leadership, as you guys meet together, do you guys have a general appreciation that this country's post-apartheid environment, constitutional state, has kind of like given you guys a conducive environment upon which your talent can thrive? That's number one. Secondly, do you think comedy skills or comedy talent can be nurtured or is developable? I mean, I know David Gao tried with SABC what is Fanta, so you think you can laugh,
So
show where they were trying to go. Yeah, so you think you're funny. Where they were trying to travel around the country, identify comedy. Do you think is this not so much of a calling, or is it so much of a skill that can be nurtured or developed? To a point where one can be a successful comedian? I think.
Tabo, thanks. I mean, two interesting questions, Loyiso.
Cool. Well, the first one is I don't know. I mean, I think the first question would be yes. I think post-apartheid has I think the idea of freedom of movement is it's very underestimated in whatever economy, particularly. Space, I mean, even the idea of statue is of removing statue. It's not a statue or per se. It's about claiming the space. So, is it better off to do comedy post apartheid than during apartheid? Definitely. Have the conditions improved for you to do comedy and be able to expand yourself? Definitely. I definitely think there is a great benefit to being a comedian at this time of my life. And also, I mean, I was talking to Joe Mafela at the South African Film and Television Awards 2 years ago, and he was telling me. He's like, oh, you guys are buying houses from this TV stuff, and he said back in the day, he and his crew, the cast, were protesting, right, to get R1 a day on set. No, I think it was R6 a day, and to be fed, right? And he said to him it was such a thing because he says to be funny in those conditions, it's like quite a strange thing, Yes. It was because when you think you have it all, and he said no. I mean, we fought to get R6 a call.
Yes.
This is probably in the 60s. I don't remember the time.
Yeah.
And he said we were fighting to eat on set. And eventually when they did allow them to eat, they weren't allowed to eat with the white people. So he was like, it was a victory nonetheless, because it wasn't the first time they were dealing with segregation in that way. They couldn't eat with the people, but it was a victory because they were allowed to eat on set, and they'd gotten a raise to $6 a call. It's like, wow, okay, cool. Maybe I shouldn't complain about the conditions I'm working in. Second question, which is about it depends. It's the same with anything. It's the same with anything. You get people with natural talent who hone it and become great. And you get people with natural talent who become average without honing it or developing their natural talent. Or you get people with natural talent who never become interested in whatever they're doing. So with comedy or stand-up comedy or careers in the fields of comedy, I think there are people who are just naturally funny. I think if I think of myself, I think every person that I meet who's a friend of my father always says your father was probably the funniest person around. And when I watch him, even at this age, when he's talking to his friends, he hogs the mic in a strange way, and he tends to just talk the whole time, and everyone around him is laughing. So I don't think I inherited it, because I like to think that I put a lot of work in constructing jokes and making things funny. But I think some people are naturally funny, and I do think some people work hard at it.
I'm fascinated to know, I mean, you must encounter people, or maybe not. I'm just going on an interview I heard with an American comic, Louie CK, where people came and said, he has these excruciating things where people come to him and say, will you look at some of my material?
Oh, yeah. You're talking about season 5 now.
I just heard it on a radio interview.
I was watching season 5 this weekend.
So is that something that's happened to you where you've got to say, you know what, John, you're a nice guy, but funny you're not? I mean, do you encourage people to go onto what I would imagine can be a fairly brutal spotlight if you're not going to make it?
I'm a very encouraging soul.
Okay.
By nature.
Okay.
So sometimes I don't know. I wouldn't kill your soul and say that don't do stand up again. Like I wouldn't be able to be one of those pop idol judges who sit there and tell kids they can't sing, they must stop singing, they're horrible singers, even though it's the truth. Sometimes I tend to hold back. Even with politics, sometimes I go, I can't really say that. That's just a bit out of line. Let's just hold it back. That's a bit harsh, right? So I wouldn't. I'm not that kind of person.
Was there ever a time when you must have gone up on stage, done stuff, and it didn't work as well, or you must have bombed? Was there ever a time when you thought, you know what, I can't do this, or were you on the road and you were going to finish what you started?
Oh no, I mean, there's times where you just do a joke and it sort of doesn't work out. It happens to every single human person who does comedy.
Yes,
a human person. That's tautology, isn't it? Tautology. You can't say human person.
I don't know.
You can't. It's tautology.
But
a human is a person.
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah. It happens to everybody who does stand-up comedy. You're trying out the material and sometimes it works. It seldom happens on a big stage. It usually happens in a small club when you're trying out stuff in front of a small group of people. But I've thought of stopping doing comedy, but it was not for the reason of like, that didn't work, therefore I'm going to quit. It was just maybe you're going through a deep depression maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe after like a breakup, when you're 21 and a breakup happens, you think it's the end of the world or something like that. It was never related.
Try a breakup at 42.
No, let's not try a breakup. If you're with me at 42, we're gonna die together. I don't care.
I want to ask you, I mean, socially, either with people you know fairly well or people you're meeting perhaps for the first time, but with the possibilities of friendship, are there people who sort of say, okay, Loyiso, make us laugh? I mean, or do your friends and the people around you know well enough that there's one guy who does that and then there's Loyiso who's our friend?
I try not to tell jokes. I'm more observational.
Really?
And just sit there and watch everyone and then I'll talk about it later. But I wouldn't really, if I'm a stranger to the group, I won't participate immediately.
I'll tell you why I'm smiling, because you say you're observational. Tokozani sends us this on Facebook. Laugh out loud. I'm actually the guy who drives the 7 Series and pours 20 Rand of petrol. I mean, have you ever had anyone say, having watched either something you did on TV or came to one of your shows and said, hey, that was me? I mean, that you'd observed something, picked a line, picked a scenario?
That happens. It happens a lot.
Are they flattered or annoyed?
Well, it's they usually not flattered or annoyed. They usually I didn't notice that about myself.
Okay.
And then you go, okay, yeah, that's what happened. It's like a friend of mine. We've been friends for a very long time, and he lives in Soweto, and it's weird. So we meet up in various places and we hang out. But when he's in Sandton, he has a different voice. When he's in Soweto, it's a different voice. And I had to point it out to him. When he's in Sandton, he's like, Isha, how's it Brit? And then da. Then when he's in Sandton, that's how he talks, because he went to a private school, whatever. Yes. But when he's in Soweto, he's like, skip on, Gola. Keep up my what? I'm like, dog, that's not how you talk. It's like, like a cheese boy was on boy, so I have to talk like this. No, And he never really noticed it. I had to tell him, dude, you talk differently when you're in the ghetto when you are in the suburbs.
Sarah asks this on Twitter, Loyiso. Does Loyiso work for the opposition, or does he just not like the ANC? I've noticed that he always attacks them on his show. I mean, do you get asked that kind of stuff often, and what's your response if you do?
I don't know. I think that's a very unsophisticated question. I think we should move on. It's just like, I don't understand. You clearly not getting what I'm doing if that's your take on it. I don't think I attack anybody. There's always a context to every story. I think that I don't think that we've ever just come out of nowhere and said the president is an idiot and this and that. And the third in the organization is there's always a story behind it. It needed to be corruption, mismanagement, a lie or something. We're dealing with a particular issue. So I think the person, first of all, is very unsophisticated, and they shouldn't ask me questions like that, because that make no sense.
Can I ask you about the environment amongst comedians? Is it a collaborative environment? Is it competitive? Do you all want each other to succeed, or are there some edges?
I mean, I think that competitiveness is a natural human thing. But to a large extent, I think that there's a great deal of camaraderie among the comics. I mean, when people are doing a show, they'll give me a call and they say, "Hey, man, how do I go about writing an hour of a show?" I mean, sometimes we help each other out. Sometimes Kumba calls me and says, I'm going to do he said he's doing a show soon. And he's like, "Hey man, I'm quite nervous. How do you deal with the nerves? How do you start writing it? How does the process work?" And we sit down and we talk about it. And I ask him vice versa. How do I turn this bit? So there's a great deal of camaraderie, but the competitiveness is inevitable. So everyone's trying to always do better than. I mean, are you telling me you're not trying to take over Bob Mabena's spot in the morning?
I'm not.
You're lying.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not.
I'm joking.
I did morning radio for 9 years, and Bob has every ounce of my respect. In that framework, though, of how the comedians relate, Uppercut on Twitter, I assume that's, I don't know, maybe it's Mr. Uppercut, asks, who's your best comedian and why?
I don't really watch comedy. I watch Louie CK. It's so crazy because when I'm in New York, I do about 4 shows a night. Mm-hmm. So when I was in New York, it's bizarre that every time I perform in New York, I always end up in the same gig as Louie CK. Mm-hmm. I mean, South Africans might not know him, but he's a huge act. Yeah. And for me, what really gets me about him is the fact that I saw him once do, this is all in the space of 2 years, do like a 40-minute set, which he used for one of season 4. So he used all that material for season 4. Then I saw him do a special, right, that he recorded, which was an hour and a half of material. And then he did the new series of Louie CK, where he burnt another close to 30-40 minutes of material. Then when I was in New York 2 months ago, I saw him, not even 2 months ago, I mean, I'm talking maybe 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. He was doing a new hour on stage. I was watching him going, this guy has a second to none work ethic. So with that regard, I respect his work ethic, and he's able to find his voice. He was able to find his voice. So the sooner you are able to find your voice in comedy, the easier the material comes. The material is secondary to style and voice. Your voice is the thing that keeps you consistent. And as soon as you can find that, and I'm like, he found his voice. He can therefore just churn out material. And I'm envious of that. So I kind of look up to that.
086 00 959. Lerato is calling from Randburg. Hi, Lerato.
Larry.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Well, cool, man.
I'm all right. Loyiso, I just want to ask your professional opinion as a comedian. What happened with our president when he did the whole Nkandla saga? I want to find out, was it actually funny, in a sense that I feel if a white person had maybe imitated a black voice, it would have been maybe borderline racism or whatever. But everyone is saying, no, it is just a joke and blah, blah. And I just feel it is maybe, in a way, had it been vice versa, it would have been an issue and they would have said this person is racist. So if a white person had imitated a black person, it would have been out of hand. So what do you think as a comedian?
Okay, I'll give you, there are two parts to your answer, and I'm gonna answer that accordingly. The reason anything is racism, it is mainly because it's attached to a history. So personally, I wouldn't have felt if a white person had made had made the voice, it would have obviously been seen as racist, and with good reason, because there's a history attached to that. That's what makes things racist, because there's a history, and we're trying to build out of that history. So that, and vice versa, it might not apply because there's not a great deal of history that would imply that it is racist. In terms of comedy, the president found his true calling. I think he is a outstanding comedian. The timing was perfect. His imitations were broken, man. Broken. That was a great imitation. Even Nkandla. It was awesome. I don't. As honest feedback, it was probably the best 2 minutes. He should take that 2 minutes and take it to Letterman or Jimmy Fallon. That is a good 2 minutes of stand-up comedy.
Take it to them before they take it. Benny's in Vosloorus. Hi, Benny.
Hi, John. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm good.
Just speak up a bit, Benny. Yeah, give it a blast there.
I've got only just one question for Loyiso. When he's picking up maybe on a powerful person like the president, doesn't he sort of like get worried that he might get into trouble? Like, I've seen like Zapiro has had some drawings about the president and the tap and talk and all that got him into trouble. Doesn't he have that worry at the end of the day?
Well, first point is that we don't live in Syria. We live in 2015 Johannesburg, South Africa, where we are protected by the Constitution and our democracy. And the point of satire as well is to demystify power. Is to make these people human, which they are. They're not. You can't see them as above you, which I don't. I see them as civil servants, which is what they are. When I elect them and I put the X next to their name, I'm not saying you are more powerful than me. I'm saying, can you govern and do what you promised us to do or lead us towards the right path? You are then elected to serve, and that's what I hope my satire would do to the society of South Africa, for the people to go, oh yeah, these are human beings that should be serving us, as opposed to the powerful leaders, as the honorable member has called and said. He said powerful leader. I'm like, no, it's a civil servant. He's a person who's elected by you to serve you. He's not a powerful leader. He's just a civil servant.
Nompumelelo. No, this is, I'm reading the wrong one. No, it's Nompumelelo with another question. What did your parents say when you decided to go into comedy?
I think my parents were just my mom was happy that I was just out of her house. Parents just get out of my house, and but I think, my mom, when I was in matric, she just would, how your mom just leaves all these forms underneath on your bed, and it's just like, have you applied? And I applied at several schools, but they didn't accept me. I applied at advertising school, but I think I was determined to do stand-up. I remember when I was 17 years old, and I'd been doing stand-up maybe like 8 months or something like that. And what happened was I took a train from Cape Town. It was the only money I could afford at the time. I took a train in the middle of winter. It was the coldest I've ever experienced South Africa ever. And I took a train from Cape Town to Johannesburg, which was 18 hours. I got here and did a 5-minute open spot, which didn't pay me. And I got back on the train and I went home. So it was like 32 hours to do 5 minutes of stand-up comedy at Parker's. And they all used to be at Four Ways. Remember Four Ways Mall? Yeah. And, I thank Joe Parker for that opportunity for him to give me that 5 minutes.
How did you go?
How did I go? What do you mean?
On the 5 minutes?
Oh, yeah, it was cool. I mean, I was always professional. I always taken stand-up comedy very seriously. So I prepared. I mean, I had 18 hours to prepare. I got my head into it, and I did well. So subsequent to that, the next school holiday, when I did come to Johannesburg, he was able to book me this time, haven't seen me. Because I called him, I said, hey, I would like to do your club next time I'm there. He said, well, come do 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to come there and do 5 minutes. It's the same like if I speak to an agent in New York and I say to him, and I say, hey, here's the thing. I want to do this and this and this. Help me with that. And they say, hey, okay, let me see you. Can I see you on... I say, okay, cool. I'll come there.
Yes.
And you go to New York and you do a set and you hang around a little bit and they see you and you may have other meetings and then, you tend to get more things done. I believe in out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
That's why I go to London and New York a lot, because those are the two comedy markets, and the sooner people realize you're accessible in those territories, the better.
We've just got a minute left, but
a minute left.
I want to ask you this: 3 wishes you will.
3 wishes. I haven't thought of
that. That's why I'm asking you now. So, what do you wish for the country?
For the country, I just think we need a new head of state.
What do you wish for your family and those you're close to?
Health, good health. We're lucky because we people are quite healthy. We're quite a healthy bunch. We don't really get hefty diseases, touch wood. So I'd like a good spell of health to continue.
And what do you wish for yourself?
For myself, I wish I wish on a lot of things, but the general premise is to make more good decisions than bad.
It's not a bad wish. Loyiso Gola, thanks very much. I think we made a good decision inviting you to be here tonight.
Thank you. It was quite a intense conversation.